there's no perfect diet, like, and everyone sort of comes to their own body's perfect diet through experimentation. Like that's the only way to know. Like you can read all you want, you can listen to what other people say, but you have to see and try what works for your body, what makes you feel good, what gives you the most energy, what gives you the best hormonal health, hair health, skin health, all of the things that matter.
Yeah.
So hopefully this inspires you to do that. Hey everyone, welcome back to Basic Fit Chicks. Today we want to talk about nutrition. We're going to keep it kind of broad, and then any topics that interest you, we'll go deeper into in future episodes. So we're going to talk about, basically get into the fundamentals of what are calories, what are macros, what are the different types of diets that exist out there that me, Ishta, and many of you probably have tried. And then we'll get into supplements, why we take it, our philosophy on taking certain supplements, when we stop, when we start. And yeah, we'll kind of close off after that. So let's just get started. So to start, Ishta will give a overview of what calories are, what macros are, so that we can get into the topics in depth for those who don't know.
Yeah. Thanks, Preeti. Just starting to talk a little bit about tracking food and what calories are and what macros are. Calories really measure the amount of energy that we get from food, and they can be counted in different ways. Like a lot of you must have seen labels, kilocalories, how many kilocalories in 100 grams of food or in the entire portion of food. And they're usually counted either as how much energy is released, like thermal energy, like heat is released when food is oxidized, which used to be the standard approach. Or like more recently, it's using the average calories from macronutrient groups to make sure that it's being adjusted for how food is absorbed and digested. So really, it's a measure of how much you're eating and how much energy your body is getting. And the other side of that is how much energy you're expending or burning. And usually people try to match the two when you're trying to sustain weight. They try to eat less calories than they burn when you're trying to lose weight, and vice versa. In terms of macros are sort of major food groups, I would say. Again, must have seen this on nutrition label. There's carbohydrates, there's proteins, and there are fats. And each of them give different amount of energy. So carbohydrates and proteins usually give 4 calories of energy per gram of food group, and fats usually are more dense and they give on average 9 kilocalories per gram of fat. These are, again, averages. So different foods have different nutritional profile. They're absorbed differently. They're digested differently. But on like a standardized basis, that's usually how calories are calculated at the moment. And there's a lot of discussion about what foods are good, what foods are bad. But really, all of the food sources have their benefits. So protein is very important for muscle repair and synthesis. So when, for instance, we go to the gym, there are these micro tears that happen in our muscles, and protein really helps repair them. And this is why a lot of people like to eat a lot of protein to build muscle. Fats, even though they have a very bad reputation, they're very essential for cell repair. They provide a lot of insulation. So if you're in cold weather and you have more fat, you're well insulated from the cold. They provide a lot of flavor and satiation. So if you eat fat as part of a healthy diet, you usually feel more full. And they also help to lower inflammation in general.
And they help with hormone production, right?
That's exactly. Yeah, that's actually a really good
that's
one.
That's why women need fat, and sometimes going too low fat can be pretty detrimental.
Yeah, and like a lot of hormones are fat soluble as well. So if you're not eating fat, you just cannot just will not be able to digest those hormones. So like it's no point being on a low fat diet and taking a lot of supplements when you're actually not able to digest them. And finally, carbs are, again, like vilified quite a lot, but they're also very good nutrients, and that they're the main source of energy. So when you're actually doing anything, the thing that gets burned to produce sort of energy for your muscles are carbohydrates. A lot of people try to eat fewer carbohydrates. So in general, like they contribute, like complex carbohydrates are very, very good for you. So they keep you full for long. They release energy over long periods of time. You can eat a lot of complex carbohydrates. They usually come with fiber. So just naturally they come sort of in their natural form. They're usually like packed with fiber, which means you can eat them. They get digested very well. They really help towards heart health. Like oats are probably the most well-known superfoods, which are a huge source of complex carbohydrates. So it's really not, all food sources are very important. A couple of them get vilified a lot, but they're all like very essential for functioning of your body.
Yeah, you definitely need a balance of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Now, the biggest question then comes down to like how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates you need. And that's a good segue into sort of the different diet philosophies that have existed that have tried to, figure out different balances of these macronutrients to get different benefits. So we'll walk through them now. And there's a bunch that I won't go through that are kind of more niche, but we'll talk about the main ones. So one of the most popular ones that you've probably heard of is keto. And keto is basically or ketogenic diet is basically where you're eating like very high fat and very low carb diet. And you're basically trying to shift your body's metabolism into a state of ketosis, where it basically uses fat for fuel instead of using carbohydrates for fuel. So the body prefers to use carbohydrates for fuel because it's a very quick energy source. But ketosis is a process where when there's not enough carbs in the diet, the body will look at fats and take fats and then turn them into an energy source. It's a much more intensive process. It's not as easy as using carbs. So we'll talk about the downsides of that. But the benefits of that keto is it can lead to a lot of weight loss for people. So people primarily use it for weight loss, reducing inflammation, improving blood sugar control. Some diabetic patients have been put on it for that reason. And some people claim that it really helps with mental health and mental clarity. Like they feel so good not eating any carbs, just being on a fat diet. I've kind of experimented with a higher fat diet, and I definitely know the mental part of it. Like you just feel like, you have mental clarity, but that comes at a cost of more stress on the body because, like I said, converting fat to energy is a very intensive process. And that creates more stress in the body. And over time, especially for women, it can be negative because it can lead to higher cortisol levels and things like that. So keto, I think, works well for very small populations of people with certain medical conditions, but whether it's a good diet to be on long term is questionable. And it's also hard to sustain long term because the human body, like we said, is designed to use carbohydrates as a primary fuel source. So when you go for long periods of time, we're talking like years and years without giving your body the primary fuel source, that is going to have some negative effects on the body.
Yeah, and I think on ketogenic diet as well, it's quite difficult to get like a good balance of like healthy fats. So, like if you are actually trying to get primary intake from fat, it's very difficult to get healthy fats and like not get down to like lower quality fats as well. That's a
very good point. I didn't do keto full out, so I just did like higher fat, lower carb. But I think this is what you're referring to. It's called like dirty keto, where people like eat like a ton of cheese and like just very like fatty foods, which are good in moderation. But then when you overdo it, it just leads to just not the best health. And then like if you go to grocery stores and try to buy like keto friendly food, you'll notice that they often use like artificial sweeteners because they're just trying to be low carb. And so you just get like all these crappy ingredients in it if you're trying to completely carb. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right that it's just really hard to get high quality fat sources unless you're paying a lot of money for like, eating animal meats primarily to get all your fat sources.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's keto. And then the next one is paleo. So paleo, it's not as hot trending today, but it definitely was. I remember probably like 5 to 7 years ago, paleo was like the thing to do. Paleo is basically based on this like presumed Paleolithic human diet where people only eat whole foods. And so things like lean meats and fish and nuts and seeds. And then the idea is you kind of eliminate processed foods. So you eliminate, and then the idea is you kind of eliminate processed foods. So you eliminate things like things basically you'd find in a package. So anything that's whole food you eat, but anything processed you avoid. And so the benefit of this is great because like we all know eating whole foods is better, and so you get a lot more nutrients in whole foods compared to processed foods. And for a lot of people, they just see a lot of health benefits from shifting from processed foods to whole food, improved digestion, and just everything that you've probably heard of eating a whole food diet. But some of the paleo, like there's so many versions of paleo that I've seen. Like some restrict dairy, some restrict legumes for certain reasons. So it can be a little bit restrictive. And so I think overall, in general, I like the philosophy of eating whole foods. But if it comes with restrictions, then maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm like bought into that.
I would say like, I think I would say like, for me, like I would say my diet philosophy is probably like geared toward paleo as well, although I don't actually follow, like I like the philosophy. It kind of makes a lot of sense. And if you're trying to like eliminate just as much processed food as you can, it it sort of works quite well. And I think it's easier to sustain in Europe as well, where just there's a lot of fresh ingredients, even stuff that you get in packages. Like I often buy, like passata or like tomato sauce, and it really is just like you can read the ingredients. It really is just pressed tomato. Um, it's like easy to use. There's no preservatives. So I think that is, and it's just like it's healthier for you. It's like you were saying, it's easy on the digestion. I don't actually restrict, like I quite like legumes. So, I think that they're probably like a very staple part of my diet. Dairy as well, like absolutely love dairy, cannot do without it. So I think like I'm not really doing any restriction, but the philosophy of paleo just has always made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good overarching, it's better than most other fad diets I've seen. So the other one that's really trending, or maybe it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but like at least 3 to 4 years ago was hot thing is low carb. And I definitely went all into low carb thinking it was the way to live, it was the way to eat. And low carb is basically where you reduce your carbohydrate intake. And this can be like there's different versions of low carb. Like you might be eating as low as sub 50 grams of carb a day, which is more in the ketogenic category. But then what I was doing was eating like less than 100 grams of carb a day, which is not ketogenic. Like I wasn't going ketosis, but I was also primarily using fat as the fuel source because 100 grams of carbs is really not enough for my daily activity as well as the sports I do and just what my body needs. And there's been variations of this over the years. Like Atkins diet is a low carb diet. The South Beach diet is essentially a low carb diet. There's been like different names for this. I noticed that definitely when you go low carb, you lose weight. Like it's easier to maintain your weight. At least that's what I found. Initially, it could help with blood sugar control. And if you have like issues like metabolic syndrome, it could be very helpful to get that in control. But the downside is that what I found is that over time, it made my blood sugar control worse. So initially helped, but then over time, I started noticing things like my fasting glucose was elevated. And that's a big deal. Like you want your fasting glucose to be healthy. And even though like during the day, my glucose wasn't like super high or anything, it was just like the fasting glucose was definitely affected. And that's a sign of stress. And so your body's creating more glucose because it doesn't have the reserves that it needs, the carbohydrates that it needs. So for me, going away from low carb helped my fasting glucose. So I was able to go fix that within like a couple months by just increasing my carb intake. And it sounds counterintuitive that the more carbs I ate, the better my fasting glucose was, but that's what happened. Also, I think like initially I felt like really great with my workouts on a low carb diet because I was basically running on adrenaline and cortisol. Over time, it definitely took a hit on my workouts. I just noticed like I felt more lethargic and tired. It was harder to push myself in the gym on a low carb diet just because, like you said, like carbohydrates are like your body's designed to use carbs for fuel.
Yeah.
And when you force it to use fat, it's just it'll be great initially. And then eventually your body will just be stressed out from it and it'll take a hit on your energy levels, mood, everything. At least that's what I found.
Yeah. I think with carbs, I'm like a huge eater of carbs and bread and like pretty much every, like, I just absolutely love it. I eat pasta on a daily basis, bread, oats, and also I think like for me, because I do endurance sport, like I do enjoy, like I've always felt that longer bursts of activity, if I've had a huge bowl of oats in the morning, like I will just have a huge amount of energy to go on the bike and just work out for like long periods of time. I just don't get that with like, if anything, proteins and fats like make that harder. Like if you're actually trying to eat those and then go on the bike, your body is like stressed out and it's actually trying to digest these sort of non-fuel sources and non-primary fuel sources. Whereas with carbohydrates, even like I would even say like with simple carbs, like if you're actually just about to work out, like I would even like, just have like simple carbs like sugar water, but like in these gels would just go straight to the muscles and you can just have a huge amount of energy to work out. I'm huge level. Also just, yeah, being European, like everything revolves around carbs. And it's actually like, it's delicious, like bread and pasta. And if you can actually sustain it in your diet and that you eat it, maybe you eat complex carbs a few hours before you work out, there's really no downside to giving your body like the fuel source.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, that's a good point on the simple sugars. Like people like to really demonize like simple sugars or like you should only eat complex carbohydrates that are slow to digest. But it really depends on the situation. Like if you're going to do an intense workout, like me and you both work out. And so if you're going into doing an intense workout, like absolutely use simple sugars because they go straight to your bloodstream and you get the energy you need and you have much better performance in your session. Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to feel tired and lethargic during your work? It defeats the purpose, and like you're not gonna have a good session. It's just gonna be a wasted session. But with that said, like, would you eat simple sugars at a time where you're gonna be sedentary for like the next 6 hours? Maybe not. But when you eat it and when you don't.
I think the good thing, like what I really like, I don't know if you've seen this, but like even in like cycling races, like candy is like a very well consumed source of fuel. And I do that all the time. I love candy, but eating candy at 10 p.m. on a Friday night is like not great. But eating candy at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning before a bike ride is fantastic because it just gives you all the end and you can just take it with you. And people often do that a lot. So you can still treat yourself if you just do it at the right times.
At the right time. Yeah. Like timing is everything. The timing of when you eat certain foods can make a huge difference in how your body processes that specific food and utilizes it, and whether it stores it as fat or whether it uses it as fuel. So that's another really good topic. Carnivore is basically where you're like on a highly restrictive diet of eating only meat, and occasionally they'll allow like dairy and eggs, but it's mostly like meat and fish. You're just eating protein sources, and you tend to pick higher fat protein sources because you're not eating much carbs in a carnivore diet, and so you need that as a fuel source again. So it has some similarities with like the low carb and keto diets in the sense that you're eating very high fat and protein, but the difference here is that your carnivore is that your meat is a big component of your diet, so you could be eating almost a pound of steak a day to sustain yourself. Some people, the carnivore community is like very religious. Some people swear by it. It's solved all their health problems, like things like autoimmune disorders, mental issues, digestion, like IBS, like all these issues like that they had apparently solved by carnivore. I think there's some truth to it and some over exaggeration in the sense that I think in the short term it does sometimes resolve these issues because then it helps reduce inflammation, which then reduces all these issues because inflammation is usually the reason why you have all of these different diseases. But is it a long-term strategy? Carbohydrates are a really good fuel source. And sometimes when you eat just animal products and you don't have like fruits and vegetables, you can have nutritional deficiencies, and like the long-term effects of carnivore haven't really been studied. Like the person that's I know that has done carnivore for the longest are people like Sean Baker, and another woman, Kelsey, I believe is her name, and she's been carnivore for like over 10 years, and she even did it when she was. And she says she claims she feels the best in her life and have never has like any issues. So there's like rare people. Like, there are people who like swear by carnivore and have done it for like 5+ years, but there's not that many. It's like a handful of people who've done that. So you are taking a risk. You don't know, huh?
How do you get like this is like very interesting, but like how do you actually get fiber? Because you know you need like for everything to work, for digestion to work well, like you need a good amount of dietary fiber, right? Like how do you get that on a
So when I was on it, I mean, like fiber, they argue that fiber is not essential, and there are like even my husband doesn't eat that much fiber, and he's fine. So the whole fiber argument is another interesting one that's worth getting into at some point. But for them, yeah, they don't have much fiber, and they're doing
That is very
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I've been trying to like increase my fiber intake, and just with a lot of the studies that have come out around like colorectal cancer, and I think a lot of it is to do with like fruits and vegetables as opposed to specifically fiber. But just like having a regular sort of body system with like waste excretion, all of that, like fiber seems to help with that. But again, like if it's working well for carnivores, I'm
Yeah.
quite interested to understand actually like and there isn't like long-term studies, right? Because this hasn't been around for that long. So like what are actually the incidences of like fiber associated like cancers, for instance, would be something that I would be interested to like, look into.
Interested in. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd be interested in that too. And when I was on it, I was still eating fruit. So I was getting some fiber. And I believe I was still eating dairy. And I remember meeting with Sean Baker, and he was like my issue, the reason I got onto it because I was having like these, I never had skin issues in my entire life. And then I was like having these weird skin issues on my face. And it was just really demotivating because like it was been like 6 months and it wasn't going away, and I was trying everything and they couldn't figure out what was causing it. I asked people and they couldn't help me. And then I was like, you know what, maybe it's like I just need to cut out everything and just try carnivore. And I tried it and it wasn't really helping. And I remember having a one-on-one session with Sean Baker, and I paid for it. And he was like, why don't you try cutting out fruit too? Like sometimes that could be a culprit. And that's when I knew that like okay, I've eaten fruit my entire life. Like
Yeah.
I love fruit. I eat fruit every single day. It's my primary carb source. I don't actually, I know you love like the pastas and rice and breads, but I actually prefer fruit over that. So I was like, there's no way it's the fruit causing my skin issues.
Yeah.
And I knew I was like, I had to take a step back and be like, all right, I think like this, I don't know if this diet is going to help me.
I think for me, like if I don't eat enough, like this happens to me time and time again. With like my diet that I have, I'm sort of very good. Like in terms of like stomach, I don't really have any stomach issues. Like everything's great. But if I don't eat like enough fiber in my diet, even for like 2 days, 3 days, like I get like constipated, and it's not great. And like I'll start getting pimples. So I think like fiber, and maybe it is that your body gets acclimated. Like I'm used to eating a lot of like fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, and mainly vegetables, I would say. And I actually also love like spinach is like the one vegetable which I think is probably my absolute favorite. Like if I had to choose like one thing, like not even like one vegetable, just one thing to eat for my whole life, I think spinach is probably going to be it. So it just like it, I just can't like, I personally haven't been able to function. So even on times where I'm in India or like I'm traveling, especially like now when I'm in the US and I'm eating, a lot of bread and like chicken and like just meats and carbs. And if I'm not getting enough fiber, I just get very constipated and don't feel great, like bloated, constipated, like skin issues. So yeah, maybe like might be, if people are actually like able to survive for 10 years, maybe there's something to it where your body just gets used to a certain diet.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that to it. And you don't know how their bowels are, what their gut health is. But my husband actually, he doesn't eat that much fiber. Like he doesn't eat much vegetables and fruits. It's just his personal preference. Like he'll eat grains, like he'll eat white rice and meat, and he'll eat carbs, but like he doesn't like, for example, brown rice. He actually like prefers less fiber, and he seems to say that that works best for his body and his gut. So I don't know. I think everybody's different, and you got to figure out what works.
Yeah. Well, I think also depends on like essentially what sources of carbs. Like for instance, if he's eating oats, like oats are an incredible source of fiber. So it might be that and also like how much fiber is like it's the everlasting question, right? Like a lot of people are fine with 10 grams. I sort of try for 20. I think the recommendation is 30. Like I would love to get it higher, but I can't eat that much vegetables and fruits in a day. So it truly depends. I think like anywhere between like 10, probably like, I want to say like 7 to 15 grams. And like your body is pretty like, it can like survive on that probably.
I'll have to ask him how much he eats. Or I just have to like observe his food.
Yeah, what is he actually eating? Like, are there some secret sources of fiber that he's getting?
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I'll figure it out. I'll let you know next time. Okay. So then the next diet is vegetarian and vegan. So vegetarian is, I mean, this should be pretty straightforward. It's just you're just avoiding avoiding all animal products. And this can sometimes be where you avoid also eggs and dairy. Other times you include eggs and then you include dairy. Most vegetarians do eat dairy from what I've seen. And I would say probably 50-50 whether they eat eggs or not. And that's what I've seen in India, at least. Like I would say 50-50 in India, whether people eat eggs on a vegetarian diet or not. And often people do this, for religious reasons, primarily in countries like India. Other reasons they go vegetarian is just because of the ethical reasons. They just don't feel comfortable with killing animals for food. So that's the other reason. The benefits of a vegetarian diet, are that like, I guess you're eating, if you're good about it, could be a whole food diet. Like if you focus on just eating, like getting your vegetables and fruits in, it could be whole foods. But what I've seen is that a lot of vegetarians actually eat more processed foods than people who eat animal products because it's just hard to eat vegetables and fruits all the time. And you just feel like you crave other foods, and so you end up eating processed foods. And the other issue with vegetarian diets is that it's really hard to keep up with your protein intake because most fruits and vegetables don't have protein in them or have very little. And so a lot of Indians who are vegetarians are very, very protein deficient. And this is why they have a lot of like muscle mass issues. Like as they get older, they have like issues like sarcopenia and just weakness and weak bones, weak muscles, weak bodies. I've written extensively about it, but this is a huge issue for vegetarians, at least in India. And then vegan is even more restrictive, where they don't eat anything that comes from animals, so no dairy, like not even like honey, and that's hard. So you're basically like eating vegetables, fruit, seeds, and grains, I guess. Most people on a vegan diet are on it for more ethical and sustainability reasons. It's become popular over the last like 5 years because people like Bill Gates and others who tried to promote like vegan diets as helping save the planet. But in reality, it actually does not. And we'll maybe get into that in another episode because it's a controversial topic. Like even Elon doesn't agree that vegan diets help the planet. And I trust Elon's judgment here because he's really knowledgeable about climate, and he's building a company that tries to use, electric cars to help reduce the damage on the climate. And so, yeah, vegan diets are interesting. I have nothing against people on vegan diets, but I think sometimes it can be it can be very, like, it's almost like a religion. It becomes a religion, it becomes their identity, and they can sometimes take it overboard with the toxicity that comes with it and the judgment that comes with it. Like, they often are very judgmental of people who eat animal products. I think that's very unfair. People have been eating animals since hundreds, millions of years. And so to judge a person for eating animals and think that you're superior for not eating animals is just silly. That part of veganism I don't like. If you choose to be vegan for reasons that you don't want to, you think you don't like to see animals killed, or you want animals to be more ethically raised, I understand that. But I the more religious part.
So with vegan diets though, and vegetarian as well, right? Like the amino acids group, like methionine, leucine, lysine, like very difficult, very critical for, immune function, very critical for like muscle mass, like repairing muscle, protein synthesis. You just cannot get them. I mean, you can if you like only your diet is entirely Brazil nuts or like tofu and tempeh, maybe you'll be able to get some. But it's like most of these proteins are mainly present, or most of these amino acids are mostly present in animal protein. So unless you just like eat a huge amount of food, in which case you'll probably gain weight, considering how just fat and protein rich like nuts are, for instance. It's just very difficult to get these like protein sources very well. The other big one is that plant protein is not that bioavailable. So it's like 50 to 70% bioavailability versus almost 100% for animal protein. So you're just going to have to increase your food intake by that much to be able to. You're getting incomplete proteins unless you're being extremely mindful about how you're balancing your meals. Even in that case, like you'll just have to increase your intake of like overall food. And then even so, it's not that bioavailable. So it's quite a difficult it's a difficult one to actually get right. One thing I've found, like I saw, and this is anecdotal as well, where some parents have tried to have their kids be vegan, and that hasn't actually, like the kids have ended up with huge development and nutritional like deficiencies. Like that's definitely not something that, personally, like I wouldn't force, my children or people I know, like their children, to actually be on a vegan diet. Like it's fine if you're 18 plus and you choose yourself, but to actually be afflicted with a development deficiency because your parents at that time thought that a vegan diet is good, like that's not great.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that too. Like moms who won't give like real milk to their children, so they'll give like milk. Like that, like milk is so essential for like babies and kids. It's like the perfect food for them. It has the right balance of protein and fat and vitamins and minerals. It is literally the perfect food. Like God created milk for children to have and grow, and to deny them of that because of a vegan philosophy, I think is silly. So I definitely agree that I've seen that too, and I've kind of just have to step away from it and not get angry or upset because, like, it. I don't know. It's long term. Like, can you imagine being in a position where you have just not the best health because of the wrong diet philosophy instilled upon you? I don't know.
Especially with children, right? And yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
well known, and we don't have to even go that extreme, because I don't think even, yeah, I think even most vegans do not enforce that on their children, like because it is like becoming increasingly well known. But even if you see the impact of vegetarian diets, like in countries like India, where you sort of end up seeing like populations, like people are shorter, they have less muscle mass, there's more sarcopenia, there's more type 2 diabetes, like there's all of these host of issues associated with having a diet that's not rich in the right proteins, that's not rich in fats. Like it just like having a balanced diet, and balance just includes animal proteins, is just so important. I think it's also why a lot of Indians like included dairy. So like, even though a lot of them religious, sort of for religious reasons, are just against animal consumption, a lot of them still eat like eggs, and they will eat like they'll have milk, they'll have eggs, they'll have, like, I think chicken is the other one that's, becoming quite popular. They will not have beef and fish, but like chicken is like quite popular in the Indian subcontinent. So it is, I think
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And technically, like like if I were vegetarian and I was in India, I would hands down make dairy my primary protein source because, like we talked about with bioavailability, plant protein sources are much less bioavailable. So, like chickpeas, if there's like 20 grams of protein in a serving of chickpeas, then your body can only probably absorb about 10 grams of it. Whereas if you get 20 grams of protein from like a chicken thigh, your body's going to absorb probably like 18 grams of it or like even more. So, um, and the good thing about dairy is that it's also very, very bioavailable. And so, like, you basically digest all the proteins in dairy. And so, things like paneer, yogurt, and milk would be like my primary protein sources if I was vegetarian because it's so bioavailable. There's a lot of nutrients in it. It has all of sometimes like Indians are very, very vitamin D deficient and calcium deficient, deficient in all these nutrients, and milk
Yeah.
has a lot of that. So if you're a vegetarian, I think if you can eat eggs and milk, like that will make a huge
So
in your health.
paneer is amazing. Like it tastes fantastic. Like it's very like you can like just there's like so many ways you can like eat it, right? Even just by itself without any like you don't have to like even cook it. It tastes fantastic. Great in like curries, great in like salads, sandwiches. Like there's really nothing like paneer is probably I think one of my like favorites as well. Like spinach, like palak paneer, right? India, like it's like
Palak
the
paneer is so
staple.
good.
It's I eat it like I eat it pretty much every day when I'm in India. So I think it's
Yeah.
like I think like definitely with Indians, like it's hugely important to like have dairy. Try and have like as much animal protein as you can, but like within the constraints of the country and the religion.
Yep. I totally agree with that. The only thing with paneer is that like if you make it your primary protein source, like having it one serving a day is fine. But if you make it your primary protein source where you're eating a lot of it, it could add up. The fat does add up. But there's an easy solution to this, and I wrote a blog post too, is that you just make low fat paneer at home, which is not that hard to do. It's not as tasty, but if paneer is a primary protein source, then you should probably mix it with both regular and low fat just to control the intake.
The other like really good thing I found recently, and I was always against it, but because I love like yogurt in general, but like there's this like Icelandic yogurt that is like quite
Steyr
big
yogurt.
in Steyr, right? And I had it's delicious. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I thought
it's
it's
so
gonna be
good.
like I know, and it's like low fat, high protein. I thought it's gonna taste pretty bad, to be honest, because like, fats do contribute to taste, but tastes fantastic.
Yeah. No, I basically I used to eat mostly just Greek yogurt. Now I've switched to Steyr. And lately I've been getting more the full fat Steyr. Traditionally, Steyr is made with low fat or non fat milk. And for those who don't know, Steyr is like a step up from Greek yogurt. So yogurt is basically where you put the cultures in milk. And so it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of milk to yogurt, maybe a little bit less. So the protein in milk versus yogurt is similar. Greek yogurt, you need twice as much milk to make Greek yogurt because it's strained. And so it's like a much more concentrated form of the yogurt. And that's why it's so high in protein. So like, if a cup of yogurt has 10 grams, a cup of Greek yogurt will have like 20 grams. And like Steyr is like even beyond that. So I think it takes like 3 or 4 times the amount of milk to produce like portion of Steyr. And so it's like even more higher in protein than Greek yogurt. And it's actually technically not a yogurt. Did you know that? So it's actually a cheese.
I don't think it is. Yeah, I think it's a cheese. Yeah, like it's a cheese technically. Yeah, or
It's
even
cheese,
better.
but it doesn't taste like a cheese. It tastes like yogurt. So we might as well just call it a yogurt. Yeah. So traditionally it's made with non-fat milk, but they do sell like the regular fat ones as well. The regular fat ones are really, really good. I almost have to water it down a little bit because it's like so freaking thick. And so I kind of put some water in it and like mix it with salt, and it just becomes this amazing yogurt.
I'm gonna have to get this. I've not had like the full fat one, but I mean, like full fat dairy is just, it's the dream, right? I usually try not to eat full fat dairy because I'm getting a lot of fat from other sources. But I think
Yeah.
I'll make an exception for this and like try and, but I usually eat it
Yeah, and you
sweet.
can
So,
like you can always just cut it down. Maybe eat like half of what you would eat and put like a little bit of water in it. Um,
mhm.
or like yeah, what I do is I'll mix styre with salt and some nutritional yeast, and it becomes like a really good snack.
Yeah, nutritional yeast is something that I came across recently. I had no idea about nutritional yeast, so I think I'm going to try and start incorporating that in my diet as well. I mean, the amount of bread I eat, I might as well like use nutritional yeast. I often make
Yeast.
bread as well, so might as well
Okay.
like make it with nutritional yeast.
Yeah, it's great. My acupuncturist introduced me to it last year when I was postpartum and just kind of feeling low energy. He was like, are you eating beef? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, try nutritional yeast because your B vitamins might be kind of low still because your body's still recovering. And I started incorporating it, feel better, more energy. So the other thing is it's vegetarian. So if you're vegetarian, it's also a decent protein source. I think you get like 7 to 10 grams of protein per serving of nutritional yeast, and you get a ton of vitamins and minerals. It's not a thing though in India. I've tried to recommend it to Indians and they just like look at me like I'm weird. I don't think they know what it is.
How do you eat it? Like, how do you, is it like, do you usually, like, yeast is used for baking, right?
I actually
So
just
how is
mix
it?
it in. I mix it in yogurts with cottage cheese, or you can sprinkle it as like pseudo cheese on, I don't know, like vegetables. Like,
Mm.
I used to bake asparagus in the oven with olive oil, and then once it's done, I'd sprinkle nutritional yeast on it, and it was so good. It almost tasted like cheesy asparagus.
I'm gonna order some nutritional yeast. Yeah.
Yeah, I get the non-fortified version, so you don't really need fortification. Okay, so the last two diets that I want to quickly cover is Mediterranean. So this comes in and out in waves. I've noticed it's promoted as being very heart healthy. Um, it tries to basically mimic the diet that countries that border the Mediterranean have. So it's very high in things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, olive oil, fish. Olive oil and fish are a big thing. And then you do moderate consumption of like poultry and red wine and dairy. And overall, like this is kind of promoted, like I said, as a heart healthy diet. And I don't really know enough I haven't really tried the Mediterranean diet to know enough about the downsides and the benefits. But definitely, I don't know. What have you?
Yeah, huge fan, huge fan. Like I do travel in Europe a lot, and like there's times where I've spent a lot of time there. Also, like it is like I do try and eat fish and olive oil. I think it is like a great sort of. I've read a little bit about it, like the whole like blue zones debate that's been going on for some time. I don't think it's very scientific. I think the amount of olive oil that you need to have in a day to have like clinical impact is quite high. So that being said, a lot of my friends who are from the Mediterranean, they like sprinkle olive oil on pretty much everything. So you can't, like, they will cook stuff in olive oil. There'll be more olive oil on top of it. Like everything has. So I think like you could potentially, like, if you're eating that much olive oil as opposed to just cooking with it, it's sort of, I suppose you get enough of it. It is an unsaturated fat. It is like in general good for you. I think same with like if you're eating fatty fish, right? You're getting your EPA, you're getting your DHA. Nuts are also big in Mediterranean diets. So again, very very full source of various nutrients. I think there's also this whole. I was reading this, and I think there's also this whole interesting debate that how much of it is like the Mediterranean diet versus how much of it is the Mediterranean lifestyle in general. So, like it's very low stress environments. There's usually,
Yeah.
a lot of like walking, like in the mountains. There's a lot of like fishing incorporated, like very like social, happy lives where you have big families. There's, people are cooking for 10, everyone's having like a fish. So there's the correlation is not exactly clear, on how much of it is like Mediterranean food and how much of it is like
versus the
Mediterranean
lifestyle.
lifestyle. I know. And they're also like traditionally just very chill people. Like everyone I know
Yeah.
from that part of the world, like doesn't usually like get very stressed. They go on holiday, they just like, just have a great time in that part of the world. So I think like it's the mix of both. That being said, like high unsaturated fats to a certain extent, like they're not doing like 50 or 60% of their calories from fat. It's much more like in the 20 to 30% range with like a very good source of like just, polyunsaturated your fishes, your salmons, your mackerels, your anchovies, which are very staple in their diets. It is like known to be like just very good for you. I think I do eat fish multiple times a week. Not always like the fatty, like super fatty fish. Like I prefer to go for the sea basses as opposed to like salmon and mackerels. I think it's a good diet. It's like it's very good for your heart health. But just you need like very high concentrations of everything, and you really need to commit to it. It's not just like one fish a week or like every 2 weeks like me. Probably need to eat it every day to see any real impact.
Yeah. No, my husband actually loves olive oil. It's like he thinks it's like the nectar of gods. He thinks it just tastes so good. If you get a high quality olive oil, I agree with. Like the
It's
refined
like cold
ones, not so
pressed,
much.
right? Oh yeah, I mean, like
Yeah,
I think
cold
it's
pressed.
you want the mechanical like cold press, like the expensive ones, right? But the ones
Yeah.
and you usually actually don't want to cook with olive oil, like the cold pressed ones.
Yep.
You want to have it raw.
Yeah, because the olive oils don't have a very high smoke point. I think their smoke point is about 350, and so by the time you get it on a pan and cooking, your temperature of the meat or whatever you're cooking vegetables is going to get 350. So it's best to use as like dressings and toppings. Like I'll use it in cooking if I'm cooking it low. Like if I'm eggs like very low and slow, I'll sometimes use olive oil if I just want to change it up from using butter. But usually, yeah, you don't want to cook with it. It's meant for like dipping.
Yeah. Oh, and like the bread, right? Like in Italy,
Oh,
Italian
so
bread with
good.
like Italian olive oil. You cannot beat that. It's to be honest, I would say like good olive oil like tastes much better than butter on bread. So, and that's like high praise,
Really,
right?
I
It's all
actually like
like,
butter.
yeah, I
Yeah,
really like butter. I'm a big fan, like, but I think like if it's really good, and like in Italy, right, they have these olive oils which can be infused with like chili, with lemon. Oh, I mean, what an experience. Like, and it's not like infused as in it's like a mechanical, like they're doing something. They just like put lemon inside it and just let it stay for a few days. And like, that's your lemon infused olive oil.
that's funny. Yeah, so Mediterranean, definitely give it a shot if you want. And then the last diet, which would be a good segue into the next portion, is pro-metabolic, which is it's sort of my philosophy now on how I want to eat, at least at this season in my life where I'm a mom and fertility is important for me. Basically, the pro-metabolic diet is the original creator or the thought process behind it is this guy named Ray Peat, who is a very, very incredible scientist, doctor, who has tons of blog posts on his website about how to eat and how your hormones work and things like that. And the idea of a pro-metabolic diet is that you're focusing on eating foods that help increase your metabolism. And so he actually promotes for eating, more calories, not less, to kind of ramp up your metabolism, especially very, very important for women because if your metabolism is low, it can also suppress some of the hormones that are required for fertility. And so things like low thyroid can be an issue with low metabolism. And he promotes using a pro-metabolic diet to um, improve your thyroid conditions and get things really moving. And he's a huge proponent of carbohydrates because he believes they're metabolically friendly and they're good for your metabolism. Overall, I agree with probably like there's no perfect diet, but I like his philosophy. I've seen benefits from it, and it's not like he recommends exact specific foods to eat. It's more about finding what foods help you and help increase your metabolism and help improve your hormonal health. So sometimes I don't know, people love to like really create dogmatic diets on everything. But I think the pro-metabolic diet is not really a diet, but it's the philosophy of like how to eat. And there's really no restrictions necessarily. Like he does briefly mentioned things like nuts being sometimes suppressing metabolism, but that's different for everyone. Like I still eat nuts. I love the taste. Find it very satisfying. But like fats and nuts are very satiating for me. But I have it in moderation. I'm not having like everything. Not like I'm not having like plant milk on top of like almond flour, everything plus nut butters. Like you can definitely go overboard with certain foods and health foods. So it's just good to be mindful of like what works for your body and figuring out how to use a pro-metabolic approach. So yeah, that's a good segue into like what we currently do. And I kind of talked about what I've tried. I've tried pretty much low carb, carnivore. When I was way younger, I did low fat for a long time too, thinking like that was the thing to do. Like the fat was bad. I don't know if this being trendy like 10, 20 years ago, but it was huge back then. Like everything was low fat and everything. But I've kind of come to a very balanced approach now. I probably eat a mix of animal foods and plant foods. I don't try to just eat animal foods or just eat plant foods. I eat fat in moderation. I eat carbs in moderation. I eat protein in moderation. So everything's kind of great, like balanced. I try like not to do super high protein or super high fat because I don't really need that much. Like I try to get like 100 to 120 grams of protein a day, and that's enough for my body and my activity levels. And then carbohydrates, it kind of depends on my activity level for the day and what I'm craving. And then fats, fat will probably be about 30% of my macros of my calories for the day. So that's kind of what I do now, and it seems to work pretty well. And I've stuck to like mostly eating whole foods and cooking at home. We do go out to eat occasionally, but we eat like at good restaurants where they make their food from scratch. I don't remember the last time we've gone out to eat like at like a food chain. Our family just doesn't do that. We don't even want that food. um, but yeah, what like you said that you follow the whole, the paleo diet.
Yeah, the paleo
Okay.
philosophy, I think. Yeah, so I think I've tried quite a lot of different things as well, but my approach to like nutrition, like it's always been a bit different. I think it's never like, I've actually not followed like a fad diet, so to speak. Like in different stages, I've done different things. Like there was this period where for lunch, I would just eat overnight oats. So for months, I would prepare overnight oats. I would like take them with me. I would just eat them. They're great for you, but it just wasn't convenient. Like I just couldn't can't eat overnight oats for lunch for the rest of my life. Just no matter how great they are. I've been doing intermittent fasting for a long time. What I mean by that is I'm not that hungry in the mornings usually. And like right now I'm in the US, so my circadian rhythm is all like weird. So I am hungry in the morning and then I do eat breakfast. But when I'm like usually in Europe on my normal time zone, I usually don't like get hungry until like 11ish. So if I'm going on the bike, then in the morning, I then have to like either have my simple carbs, like the gels or like oats. But usually if I'm not working out in the morning, I will just not eat until lunch. I think that for me has worked really well because like I can like control what I eat. And I also like to eat big amounts of food. So I can in 2 meals, I can just eat a lot in each meal and just feel very happy and satiated. So that's I've been doing that for actually quite probably years at this point, and that sort of helps me. It helps me sort of stay on track with how much I'm trying to eat. I've done longer term fasts as well a couple of times. They didn't work that well for me. So like these 3 to 5 day fasts where like the Walter Longo fast, I've heard they're very good. Like I just personally couldn't. Like I just like food too much, and I was just miserable. And I think like what they say is that the first couple of days are the hardest, which is definitely the case. Like I was getting headaches. And then like after that, you hit a point of clarity, apparently. I didn't. I just got hungrier and angrier until I finally like one evening, I just like ordered, like just donuts and, like a huge amount of like chicken and like bread and just ate all of that, like probably like half of the fasting worth of food. So I think like that didn't work for me at all. I do like count calories. Like I have been like, just measuring how much I eat for a good amount of time and trying to make sure like I'm eating the right amount of food, making sure I'm working out the right amount. I've had, like I've gained a little bit of weight in the last few months, mainly because I was traveling in India, and I am struggling to lose that at the moment. Struggling is like it's a bigger word to say, but just like I've not made a conscious effort to lose the weight. Once I get around to it, I have to like rethink my diet. But right now, pretty balanced, like probably like, again, like similar to you, like 80 to, I think you're like 100 to 120 grams of proteins a day. I'm maybe closer like 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. Fats, again, like probably 30% of my calories from fats, maybe slightly more because I do like dairy and I do like fats. And then like the rest from carbs. Yeah, like on days that I'm like working out, I think I'm modulated based on just based on like how that day is looking. So if it's a very active day where I'm working out, I'm going on the bike, I'll just eat like just front load the carbs a lot. And then I'm less hungry during the day. On normal days, just like, eating enough protein. So like I usually like consume, I think most of my protein is probably animal protein. So like chicken breast, chicken thighs, turkey from time to time, good amount of like, fish. Beef, like I've never actually enjoyed the flavor of beef that much. So like I will eat it maybe like, like lean beef, maybe like once every couple of weeks, but I never like figured out the right way of cooking beef. So I love a steak, but I just like, I don't like cook steaks occasionally, like regularly at home. So never actually figured out a good way of like consuming beef regularly. And then a lot of dairy, good amount of like lentils, legumes, beans. Just a lot of, and I think in living in Europe as well, it's just a lot easier. Like everything is like most things are like 1 to 2 ingredients. So you know exactly what you're eating. Yeah. So yeah, like probably trying to eat like 1,800 calories a day. But I think I'm eating like significantly more at the moment.
Yeah. So in terms of what I do, similar to you, I do like to eat bigger meals. And so but I will have a breakfast. So I went many, many years doing my workouts fasted, and it was like a horrible idea because it tanked my hormones, and I was running on adrenaline and cortisol instead of running on glucose and carbohydrates. And so I've had to really rethink that and shift my eating window way earlier in the day. So now, since I do work out, but like I start my workout around like 8:39, so I'll eat something before that. And usually there'll be more liquid form and a snack rather than a big heavy meal because, I don't want to eat a big heavy meal before working out, and I want like a quick fuel source. So maybe that'll be like milk with collagen, honey, a banana with nut butter. It's still enough calories. It's like anywhere between 400 to 600 calories, but it's not like a dense meal. Lunch is then my biggest meal, similar to you. Like I like a big lunch. I used to be a really, really big dinner person for a long time, like until probably a couple months ago. And this is just like out of habit of being Indian. Indians love to eat their biggest meal, like dinner, like at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And I don't know what made me shift, but I was like, what if I tried eating my biggest meal, like, or the heaviest meal at lunch? And like, at first it felt really weird because I was just like, I don't know. I was like, I got so used to being so like feeling so light all day and then having this big heavy meal at night. But then I was like, I had this heavy meal on the other day and I still have to do stuff afterwards. But then like after a few weeks, my body adjusted and now like I love it because I have this big heavy meal and I'm doing stuff throughout the day, the afternoon. And at night, I'll still have a good meal. Like I'm not like skimping on calories or having like super light meal, but it'll be mostly like easy to digest foods. Like I'm not going to have a giant piece of steak or a big chicken roast or something. I'll have foods that are easier to digest. I actually have more carbs at night because I notice that it helps me get better sleep if I have carbohydrates before bed. And so I'll save kind of the lighter foods and the carbohydrate heavy foods for more in the evening and then have the big meaty protein in the middle of the day. That's what's working for me now. And I'm always kind of open to experimentation and trying new things and seeing what works for me. And different seasons are different too. Like some seasons of life, you might shift your diet based on what's working for you in that moment. Other seasons, you might change it for other reasons. But that's kind of what's worked for me. And in terms of what sources of protein I eat, I would say red meat is probably my primary source of protein, and then I'll eat fish like once or twice a week. Usually, I like raw fish.
Yeah.
Cooked fish isn't as tasty, but raw fish can get quite expensive. So I'll have raw sushi maybe like once a week or once every other week, and then other times I'll eat like sardines or oysters that are canned. It's not the canned fish isn't the best, but it's still fish. It gets me something, and they're very nutrient dense. And then in terms of fats, my fats primarily come from the meats I eat. So since I eat like steak, a lot of steaks will have a good amount of fat in it. Chicken thighs will have a good amount of fat in it, and fish, like I like fatty fish, like so salmon or mackerel or even sardines will have a good amount in it. And then, when I make eggs, I'll cook it in butter or olive oil to put on bread or salads or vegetables. So I'll get my fats kind of from there. Oh yeah, the other big fat source for me is nut butters. I love nut butters. A lot of people have been demonizing nuts lately, but I think in moderation they're fine. Like I'm not having like plant milk and almond flour and nuts and nut butter. Like I'm not like overdoing it. So my only source of nuts is nut butter, and I'm serving it. That's fine.
Yeah. Nut butter is
it makes
great.
me happy.
Like,
it makes me happy. So,
there's this like chocolate. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called Hu, like HU.
Oh my God, Hu is so good.
Oh my God, it is. Like I had it like the first time. I was like, oh my God, where has this been my whole life?
I'm always on the search for. I'm always on the search for good nut butters and good chocolate. Hu is amazing. And I was tweeting about nut butters on Twitter, and someone posted a link to this brand called Rapunzel. It's actually a European brand. And like I ordered their almond butter, and oh my God, it's made with white almonds. So it's like a white almond butter. And it's like the best thing ever. So I like my nut butters. I hate nut butters that are like Skippy, which are like
you mean chunky?
More dense. Skippy is a brand in America. So Skippy peanut butter is like, it's more dense. I like my nut butters where you can stir it and it's very like creamy and loose and almost like not watery, but it's more liquidy. I like nut butters that way. And this nut butter is like amazing. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's called Rapunzel, and I just order it in bulk. I ordered it in bulk. So I have like their almond butters, I have their cashew butters, I have their peanut butter.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna order. Like I think love almond butter and cashew butter. Peanut butter, I never got the hang of peanut butter, to be honest. Like I just couldn't it's just something to the flavor of. I love peanuts in general. Like I eat peanuts all the time. Like I will crumble them on stuff if I'm making like a nice stir fry or something. But I just like the taste is so like foreign to me, and it sort of extends to like teriyaki chicken and like teriyaki like spread. Like it just cannot, like it just like puts me off. Can't eat like peanut butter ice cream either. I just Or Reese's. Like, I don't know if you know, like, is Reese's American?
Oh my God, Reese's is so good. How do you not like peanut butter?
I don't know.
So funny.
I don't know. I mean, I love all the nut butters apart from peanut butter.
That's so funny. Yeah, like I used to be a peanut butter, like, obsessed. Lately, I've been kind of doing a mix of different nut butters. I think they're all good in there, depending on like the food you're eating it with and stuff. But yeah, peanut butter is huge in the US. Like, it's like, there's like peanut butter ice creams, peanut butter desserts, like peanut butter candy. It's like huge in that junk food category.
Yeah, it's a junk food category, right? Yeah, but it can be healthy though if it's actually pure peanut butter.
Yeah, you have to get like pure peanut butter that's not like overly roasted, and it's not like stored in like plastic jars. You can get it if you get it in like glass jars.
Yeah.
It's good. Like, I think this is true for honestly most foods. It's like sometimes the studies done on foods can be based on very processed or poorly packaged foods, like, the whole red meat debate. Like, a lot of the studies are done on like processed red meat and like things like burgers and like McDonald's type of meat. Like, what if we like take studies on like fresh ground beef or fresh steak and did that? Probably get different results.
Yeah, I think like that's the big issue with food. I feel that a lot of the studies, like even the, like the Netflix documentary, like You Are What You Eat, right? Everyone is like talking about it, but I mean, come on, like even like the caloric, like just the calorie content, right? Of vegan versus omnivore, it's not adjusted for that. So there's like so
Yeah.
many, and also the fact that it's only like, I think 20 pairs of people, which is like, very difficult to get any statistical findings on. I think a lot of the studies with food are just like they're not done like this. The study design, the experiment design is just not like, imagine, right? Like we both work in tech. Like would we ever be able to take like a result of this kind and like make a like product recommendation based on that? Like absolutely not. And yet
Yeah.
it's just accepted as the gospel in food.
Yeah. No, I think this is another really good topic that I'd love to do on one episode. It's like the quality of the studies that we're looking at when it comes to nutrition and diet and how to assess the quality of a study and know whether that study is good or not, because there's like thousands and thousands of articles online which will say this, like, according to studies, like this is true, and then sometimes they don't
Yeah.
even link the study. Other
Yeah.
times, like, the study is not really a study, it's just some random person claiming something, or even if it is a study, it's like very, very, very poorly done. So,
Yeah.
like, unless you're truly a critical thinker, like, I just don't trust like anyone saying, "Oh, but the studies say
Yeah.
that." It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I think unless, yeah, like I think some of the stuff, like, you can reason from, especially with nutrition, right? Like you can reason from first principles if you have good understanding of biology, which I think most
Yeah,
people actually don't. So if you've actually not done like college level biology courses, you actually probably will not be able to reason from first principles, or unless you've done a lot of thinking, like it's very difficult to
that's true.
actually go from like this is like what this food is like, and like how does it actually impact the biological process in your body. Like like the human body is a very complex system, and then on top of that, I think a lot of people also don't know how to read studies, so there's like the whole complexity of that. And like experiment design and like A/B testing. Well, I mean, maybe not A/B testing, but like let's say statistical significance and experiment design, like randomized control trials. Like it's like a lot of the so-called studies are actually not well designed experiments. They're just like just observations from a set of like 30 to 50 people, and that's not good experiment design.
Yep. Yeah, we should definitely save this for a podcast.
Yeah.
We can get into so much detail. Since we're both techies and we're both like super into science and
Yeah,
stuff.
we can pick like five great
Um,
studies and like five like shit studies, and just assess them. Yeah, or like fewer, maybe like
yeah,
10 is a lot. Like we'll be talking for hours.
yeah. That'd be a really good podcast. There's no perfect diet, like, and everyone sort of comes to their own body's perfect diet through experimentation. Like that's the only
Yeah.
way to know. Like you can read all you want, you can listen to what other people say, but you have to see and try what works for your body, what makes you feel good, what gives you the most energy, what gives you the best hormonal health, hair health, skin health, all of the things that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
So hopefully this inspires you to do that.